Sometimes the end of a really profound connection doesn't announce itself with shattered plates or screaming matches in the driveway. The most dangerous disconnections, they don't look like a war zone. They look perfectly normal. As we walk through this explainer today, we're going to explore a deeply human realization. Relationships usually don't fall apart because of one single dramatic fight. They fail because the emotional energy just quietly drains away.
There's this haunting truth to that idea. They slowly grow quieter. This distance, it creeps in so gradually that it eventually feels strangely familiar. And the tragic part? It doesn't happen because two people just woke up one morning and decided to stop loving each other. No, it happens because neither of them realized they were running completely out of emotional energy. By the time they finally notice the silence, well, the vast distance between them has just become their new normal.
Section 1. The heavy quiet. A Tuesday night in the kitchen. To really understand how this happens, let's step into a highly relatable, perfectly ordinary moment. Imagine Sarah, standing in the kitchen after a long day of work, just unloading groceries. Her husband Jason is sitting at the kitchen table, silently scrolling through his phone. The house is completely quiet. But as we're going to see, it's not a peaceful quiet. It's a heavy quiet. The kind of silence that seems to settle into the very walls of every room without anyone even noticing.
So Sarah looks up from the groceries and says, almost absent-mindedly, "How was your day?" Jason doesn't even look away from his glowing screen. He just mutters, "Tiring." And that's it. A few seconds pass and then nothing. There's absolutely no follow-up question. There's no curiosity about what made it tiring. Zero connection. It's just a painful dead-end conversation wrapped in silence.
In that kitchen, a stark contrast suddenly hits Sarah. Years earlier, that exact same question, "How was your day?" would have sparked stories, laughter, mutual complaints about coworkers, and, excited plans for the upcoming weekend. But in their present reality, asking that question feels like checking a logistical box. In that exact moment, Sarah couldn't quite explain why, but she felt deeply, profoundly lonely. She wasn't alone in the room, but she was lonely. And somehow, feeling lonely when the person you love most is sitting just 5 feet away, it feels so much worse.
But let's shift the perspective here, because this isn't a one-sided story. A few days later, Jason has his own moment. He comes home absolutely exhausted after a brutal meeting. Part of him desperately wants comfort. He wants someone to just look at him and notice that he is not okay. But he walks through the door, sees the dishes piled in the sink, laundry scattered on the couch, and he sees Sarah looking completely overwhelmed. So what does he do? He silently swallows what he was feeling and says absolutely nothing.
Section 2. Running on empty. The slow loss of emotional energy. She notices his silence. He notices her distance, but neither of them knows how to reach across the gap anymore. We're transitioning here from Sarah and Jason's specific kitchen to a dynamic that exists in literally millions of homes. This isn't about constant toxic conflict or dramatic heartbreak. This is emotional depletion. It's the slow, agonizing loss of the energy required to simply stay emotionally engaged with your partner.
And here is the tragic irony living right beneath the surface of both of their actions. Without even realizing it, both Sarah and Jason are walking around their home carrying the exact same hidden fear. If I bring up what I'm feeling, will it matter? They're both terrified of the answer, so they both stay silent. This is one of the absolute quietest, yet most profound signs that a relationship is running entirely on empty.
Most people assume relationship burnout is going to be incredibly obvious, right? Like a big blow-up. But often, it just looks perfectly ordinary. The relationship still functions. You still ask the logistical questions. Who's picking up the groceries? What time is the dentist appointment? Did you remember to pay the electric bill? From the outside looking in, everything appears entirely fine. The machinery of the household is working, but inside, the relationship has stopped feeling alive. And because it's still functioning on paper, this devastating burnout is incredibly easy to miss.
Section 3. The protective retreat. The hidden engine of disconnection. So why does this happen? Why do two people who genuinely love each other stop reaching out? Well, let's dive into the nervous system for a moment. The loss of emotional connection isn't usually lost in one explosive moment. It's lost in 1,000 tiny moments that simply stop happening. The quick glance across the room, the random text during the workday. What's happening underneath this so-called not caring behavior is actually an unconscious survival mechanism. It's highly psychological.
When we're experiencing emotional exhaustion, our nervous system takes over to conserve energy. And what's the very first thing it protectively sacrifices? Vulnerability. This isn't done intentionally or maliciously. It's done protectively. If you've been feeling unseen, overwhelmed, or disconnected for a long time, your brain makes a cold, unconscious calculation. Maybe it's safer not to expect too much. So to avoid the pain of disappointment, you just stop reaching for your partner.
And once you stop reaching, your partner protectively stops reaching too. This plays out uniquely through our different attachment patterns. Someone with a deep fear of rejection might become hypercritical to feel noticed, because hey, even negative attention is better than feeling invisible. Conversely, someone who fears conflict becomes even quieter to avoid it, absolutely terrified of making a fragile situation worse. On the surface, fighting and withdrawing look like complete opposites, don't they?
But underneath those completely different surface behaviors lives the exact same shared emotional question. Am I safe with you when I'm not okay? Relationship burnout is almost never caused by a lack of love. It's caused by a lack of emotional replenishment. Life keeps taking, stress keeps building, but neither person stops to refill the emotional tank. They're reacting to each other from survival mode, not from a place of connection.
But survival mode doesn't have to be the end of the story. Section 4, the turning point, shared vulnerability. A turning point rarely looks like a grand cinematic gesture or a perfectly scripted conversation. Usually, it just starts with a tiny spark of awareness. A few weeks after that Tuesday night in the kitchen, Sarah finally noticed the pattern. Every evening, she was sitting on the couch waiting for Jason to initiate a connection, and every evening, Jason was sitting there waiting for her.
So what happens when both people are waiting and neither is moving? It's a tragic standstill. Two people, inches away from each other, both completely frozen by the fear of being the first one to reach out and risk feeling entirely unseen. Let that heavy realization sink in for a second. That is exactly where so many couples quietly stay for years.
But for Sarah, that realization actually changed something. She realized the cycle had to be broken. So one night, she simply sat beside Jason on the couch, dropped all her defenses, and offered a beautifully simple, honest admission. She just said, "I miss us." It wasn't accusing, it wasn't blaming him for the distance, it was just raw honesty. Jason looked at her for a long moment, the protective walls coming down, and he just nodded. "Me too." Now, I want to be clear here. This moment was not a magical cure. The conversation that followed didn't instantly solve their burnout. There were awkward pauses. There were messy misunderstandings. There were long stretches where neither of them knew exactly what to say. But the crucial shift was this. For the first time in months, they completely stopped talking about logistical problems and finally started talking about their feelings. They stopped trying to fix the house or the schedule or even each other.
And this is how you move from survival mode back to presence. Section 5, returning to emotional connection. From survival mode to presence. True healing doesn't happen when you suddenly find the perfect words. Healing begins when two people become willing to stay emotionally present through all the imperfect, messy words. It happens when you stop automatically assuming your partner's negative intentions, and instead, you get genuinely curious and start exploring their inner experience.
And when you do that, you start to see deeply human realities. You realize that beneath your partner's harsh defensiveness is usually just a deep fear. Beneath their quiet withdrawal is almost always unexpressed hurt. And beneath their sharp criticism is frequently just a desperate, misplaced longing to feel close to you again. Seeing your partner through this lens changes everything. It replaces resentment with profound empathy.
Before we close, if today's message resonated with you and you want to go deeper into transforming your marriage through self-awareness and emotional understanding, I've written a Kindle book called Harmonious Marriage: Elevate Your Marriage with Self-Awareness. It's designed to help couples break negative patterns and build emotional safety step by step. You can find it in the description below. And if you're drawn to ancient wisdom applied to modern relationships, explore my second book, Mantras of Love, based on Hindu wisdom. It blends timeless principles with practical guidance for real-life connection. Both links are in the description. Take your next step toward healing today.
And if this narrative explainer helped you feel seen and more understood today, I warmly invite you to subscribe to ReframeUs. We share weekly emotional storytelling and relationship psychology insights just like this, all designed to help your relationship feel emotionally safe again. Because the truth is, sometimes a relationship isn't failing, it's just incredibly, deeply tired.
Which brings us to our final thought. Sometimes the absolute most important question you can ask isn't, do we still love each other? The real question is, have we stopped showing each other where we hurt? I want to leave you with that calm clarity today, because the answer to that question can change absolutely everything in your dynamic. And often, connection begins returning the exact moment two people simply feel safe enough to be honest again.